Welcome back to the Social World podcast. You can Google thoughts on the social world. I'm Dave Niven, and as always, it's a pleasure to have your company. Now, I think everybody's realized that safeguarding has been the kind of core issue of most of the podcasts that have been done over the last 10 years by myself. And again, I love to go back to people that I never had an opportunity to fully discover what they're doing. And today is a perfect example of that. I'm going to be talking to Karim Rajwani, who is an independent financial crime consultant and based everywhere under the sun and involved with so many different things. I'm going to let him explain it for himself. Anyway, look, Karim, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's good to talk to you again.
Now, it's been 6 months since we talked, and I know there's been quite a bit of activity since then. And I wonder if you could just lay out for us a bit of the problem of trafficking, slavery, financial crime involved in these horrible subjects. I mean, has it been getting better, worse? How about starting us off, if you could, with some statistics, if you could, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of it, as it were.
Sure. Yeah. And so interestingly, a number of reports have come out since we last chatted. And, when we last chatted, we thought the problem around human trafficking was about 134 billion annually. So
Hmm.
this is all human trafficking, and that was by the International Labor Organization in the US. The most recent report now suggests the profit is around 234 billion. So much bigger problem.
Is
Now,
that dollars?
in,
Dollars.
in, in terms of dollars, US dollars, that
Yeah.
is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, this could be better reporting, but also a growth in sort of the overall human trafficking problem. And if we look at the report by the Global Coalition to Fight Financial Crime, they estimate that revenue, so the first number, the 234 was profits. So the Global Coalition estimates the revenue to be in the region of 500 billion or close to 500 billion.
It's just mind-boggling, the numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, and then, if you add sort of cyber crime, which is, not just human trafficking, but cyber crime generally, cybersecurity ventures, a report by them, expects this to grow by 15% year over year over the next 5 years,
Mm.
and they estimate it'll reach 10.5 trillion USD dollars annually. So that sort of gives you some sort of idea of the magnitude of financial crime, cyber crime, and in particular human trafficking.
Sounds like there's a lot of work for you to do.
I can tell you the industry is extremely, extremely busy, and this is a very difficult problem to solve for.
You've been involved with several different organizations. In fact, you still are. I mean, and some I've talked to some of the people in them as well as part of, as part of this podcasting sort of series. But do you think, can I just ask you a question? Do you think that there's far too many small organizations trying to do good work as opposed to kind of joined up thinking?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Certainly, over the past 5 years, and more importantly, over the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a massive focus on industry consortiums as the ability to for the industry to come together to share information. Now obviously there are a number of privacy restrictions in terms of what you can and cannot share. Nevertheless, you can share ideas, how you approached a particular problem. And more, I think there is a push to think through, is there a better way of solving, some of these problems? You know,
Hmm.
Organized crime obviously don't follow any rules. They exploit as many institutions as possible. And it's incumbent upon us to work together as an industry if we're going to begin to sort of turn the tide on this.
Yeah. No, you mentioned the money side of it, the massive figures that you talked about there. and the fact that it's an upward trend in terms of actually growing every year, year on year. But is there a way you can sort of give us a general idea of some of the bigger trends that you're coming across within this kind to try to combat this?
Yeah, in terms of combat, there's a couple of areas I want to talk about, sort of within sort of the human trafficking,
Hmm.
the sort of big trends that are happening, the big crimes, and then talk about sort of how to sort of combat some of these. So if we start with pig butchering, so it's you hear the
Yeah,
term
please explain that. Would you? Pig butchering? It sounds a
pig.
terribly kind of awful phrase, but if you could just explain it, please.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's essentially a scam regime, right? Reason why it's called pig butchering is the victims are likened to hogs, where you fatten them up for slaughter. So what typically happens is, for the criminals, this becomes a win-win. What they do is in countries such as Myanmar, they, essentially traffic people to work in these scam centers, and they're locked up. They have no choice. Everything is taken away from them, and their job as prisoners is to basically run these call centers and scam people.
Okay.
Now, it is very organized. It is very sophisticated, and they will research, their targets for weeks, months, and sometimes years. And the scam could be a romance scam. It could be sextortion, could be, cryptocurrency, a whole bunch of different things. Initially, they'll sort of make contact, tell them about the scheme, and you even get some money out of it. And the more you invest, and eventually, obviously, the money disappears. To give you an idea of just this particular area, you know, it's the University of Texas did some research, and they think it's netted at least $75 billion since January 2020. And they estimate some 220,000 people are essentially forced in Cambodia and Myanmar alone to basically go around scam people.
Did you say 220,000?
220,000. It's staggering, and that's just in two countries.
God. Right. Okay.
So, what can we do? Certainly, the financial services industry is talking about this, working together. There is an international working group in this particular area. Law enforcement is heavily focused. The various agencies are heavily focused in this area, and you'll see a number of arrests around this. you know, in terms of individuals, you've got to know the tactics used and how to protect yourself. Typically it's an unknown caller or a text. They usually, pitching something like cryptocurrency, an easy investment opportunity. There's emotional manipulation. Don't miss out. It's a once in a lifetime chance to make profit.
Yeah.
And initially you actually even make some money, and they create fake websites and fake crypto wallets, and it all looks legitimate until the victim takes the bait. Now, um,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
in
So
terms,
look, how about how people could protect themselves?
yeah, great question. These are essentially social engineering scams, right? They
Hmm.
really work by exploiting the psychology of people, their inclination to trust. One, if you do get such calls, slow down, because what they want to do is get you to act quickly. Just
Hmm.
take your time, think about it. Certainly, the first step would be, if you don't know who it is, don't answer the call, don't respond to the text. Always research the facts, right? Research the URL. Verify the contact details. Be cautious. some of this is common sense around new acquaintances, new friendships, new romantic relationships, particularly where they start to talk about investing in crypto. They're short of money. These are all telltale signs. Obviously, never share personal information, your
Mm.
numbers, bank accounts. Uh, don't sign up for crypto unless you know exactly what you're doing and you're, sure that they're legitimate. A lot of people think crypto, I can make a, quick $1 million. Unfortunately, it does not work there,
Yeah.
and just block these numbers.
It's a classic sort of seductive scam that has been around since ever there were people that wanted to exploit other people. But just now, with social media, I expect, apart from anything else, it's just exponentially grown huge, hasn't it?
Yeah, so you've got the social media, the various, chat rooms, chat forums, apps. So the mode of communication has increased 100-fold. And then the second big change is now you've got people basically being trafficked, labor trafficked in camps, who are not paid, and locked up, and their job full time is to scam people. So for the organized criminals, it's a win-win, right? They don't have to pay these individuals, and they get to scam people.
We've just discovered in the UK, I mean, people you probably know about already, that McDonald's has been employing people who've been slaved. And that's come out as a sort of a very recent kind of expose in the media. But I mean, the numbers are tiny in comparison to what you're talking about.
Yeah, the interesting thing about labor trafficking is, there are statistics, but you just don't know what you don't know, right? Because the challenge with labor trafficking is, do you really know your supply chain end to end? And while you may not be employing, individuals at minimum or no wage, who are you buying from? Certainly, more and more countries are now legislating to say, hey, it's your responsibility to do supply chain due diligence. And that, I think that is well needed.
Do you think it's improving at all? Because I do understand the massive problems in supply chain because the end user, the customer, very, very, very rarely, in my opinion, would it even check where the clothes are made or where the food is sourced from. It seems to me a huge gap there in customer information or in customer even wanting to know.
Yeah, certainly. Historically, there's been just a complete lack of information. I
Hmm.
think what we are seeing is legislation, is in part to respond to not just government concerns, but public concerns. Certainly, if you look at Gen Z or whatever the next gen is,
Hmm.
they're beginning to say should I shop with? Where should I go? Who should I buy from?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and the more we can publicize this, the greater impact it'll have. Because at the end of the day, you know, uh, private enterprise responds to the bottom line. And if the bottom line is impacted, whether through fines, penalties, criminal sanctions, or an impact in sales, they will change behavior.
Okay. Um, we perhaps dip back into that as we talk further, but at the moment, I mean, it's young people. I mean, okay, lots of gullible adults. I get it, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of young people who are ripe for exploitation. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what's called sextortion and give a bit of advice about that for any young people or people who are working with young people.
Sure, yeah. So basically, what is extortion? This is where, a young adult, it could happen to anybody, but certainly the rapid increase is in under 18s,
Hmm.
particularly boys under 18, where they share a picture of them, which is sort of a nude picture or an inappropriate picture. And very quickly, in a matter of minutes, hours, there's financial blackmail essentially to say, send us money or we will share this with all your friends and contacts and post it on social media. Interestingly, between 3 and 5% of people are believed to have experienced some form of sextortion before reaching adulthood. In
Really?
terms of
Three to 5%.
yeah, so in terms of increases, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children over in the US, we've seen a 7,200% increase in sextortion reports between 2021 and 2022. Um,
Wow.
the Internet Watch Foundation out of the UK again seen a massive increase. Typically, it's boys, 90% are male, they're between 13 and 17. What we know, based on research by organizations like CyberTech, the Canadian Center for Child Protection, 79% of initial contact happens on Instagram or Snapchat, and very quickly they move to more secure encrypted chat apps. The main countries that this is coming from, based on sort of the latest statistics, is Philippines, Nigeria by far the largest, Cote d'Ivoire and
Do you mean in
Korea.
terms of the criminals rather than the victims, or
Yeah, in terms of the criminals,
right? Yeah.
again, very organized, and the difference here is it's soon as that picture is shared, and sometimes the picture may not even be shared, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later.
Hmm.
They can use AI to nudify a picture on social media.
Yeah.
And very quickly, they will, within minutes and hours, start to extort or sextort the individual, and ask them to pay. I think the most common amount is between 100 and $500.
Yeah.
And now what's happening is that's gone, one step further, where it's sadistic sextortion, where children as young as 12 are coerced into producing extremely, some extreme content, without getting into the details, and even stuff like self-harm, which the Australian police identified like it's a 117% increase in acts of self-harm. Now,
Incredible.
the question is, how do people protect themselves? So before sort of we go into the one final point, there is a big rise in suicide. So this is not just, hey, okay, we've lost $100 or $500. Kids are killing themselves of the shame and the potential repercussions. So, real lives are being lost.
Realize it, yeah. I mean, it's I remember, 20 years ago, with a big argument and kind of trying to make people aware of the fact that if they didn't even, for example, keep their Facebook page private, the pictures of their children on the Facebook that could be taken and have be pasted onto naked photographs elsewhere or naked pictures. I mean, there's always this manipulation of photographs if you weren't protecting your own your own images. And that was 20 odd years ago. And it now is with AI and everything else, it's absolutely growing exponentially as far as I can understand it. And listening to you, that sort of reinforces that thinking.
Yes, absolutely. So, and we'll talk more about this in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Two particular trends. One is using generative AI, Gen AI, and
Yeah.
the second trend is self-generated images. So, I mean, what can the youths do to protect
Yeah.
themselves?
Yeah. Sorry, interrupted you on that one. Go ahead,
No,
please.
no, no. I think you bring up some really valuable points there. Advice, point number one, and this comes from, the experts who man the cyber tip lines, the various helplines. One, stop all communication. Secondly, reach out to a trusted adult, a guardian, um, police, some sort of cyber tip, Internet Watch Foundation in the UK. It's various places you can actually go for help.
Mm-hmm.
You will not be in trouble with law enforcement, um, for reporting this. Do not comply with any threats. Do not send them money. Do not send them images.
Yeah.
You can
And if you can
deactivate.
just cope with the embarrassment, please tell
Yeah,
somebody. Just tell somebody. Yeah.
and and in many cases with some of this, you can actually even remain anonymous if you want and seek initial help.
Mm.
Deactivate the account, but don't delete the social media account or images, because you lose the audit trail. So that's really important.
Mm.
Save any copies of the images you've sent. Take screenshots of the messages, the person's profile, the username. All of this can be used. Um, Trust your instincts, practice caution when communicating online. Most importantly, there is a life after this. There's, after these images. The offender might make you feel that your life is over. It's not. A lot of people get over it. Remember, a lot of this is AI generated. You may not even have shared it.
Yeah.
And so just you need to reach out and realize that this will be over, right? You really don't need to harm yourself.
I know. And I appreciate that. And I think that's excellent advice for people listening. Um, Sometimes easier said than done, of course, because,
Absolutely.
people think, oh, if it's out there, it's going to be there forever and I'm never going to get, any peace in my life anymore and so on and so on. But can I just ask this? I don't know if you've come across any kind of sense of things. Law enforcement, right? I mean, when you said keep the images or whatever so that they can be traced or help to be traced and so forth, and then finally imagine it is. Are the penalties kind of being set out much more clearly these days, or are they still virtually a slap on the wrist?
Good question. Not too close to it. What I have seen is it really depends on the country.
Mm.
I'd say that the most stringent is somewhere like the US.
Hmm.
uh, where they probably throw away the keys. I think the UK is somewhere in the middle, and Canada probably at the bottom in terms of penalties. Um, and
But
I think with
The Pacific Rim countries that you mentioned, where an awful lot of the victims are, as well as the countries that you mentioned, whether it was the Philippines or Nigeria or wherever, where an awful lot of the perpetrators are. Um, how do they kind of deal with this? Have they got a sophisticated enough law enforcement challenge?
I think historically the problem's been ignored.
Yeah.
Whether it be by local law enforcement or the banking industry. Now there is incredible pressure by governments, financial institutions with these countries to say, "Hey, wake up," and even support to say, "Hey, what sort of support you need to tackle this problem?" But it's still a long way away, because we don't see the numbers going down. So certainly a lot of work to be done in these countries.
Okay. Well, now look, we're going to double back on a couple of things in a minute, but I mean, I know that something that you've been interested in tackling and making people aware about is what you would call deep fake pornography. How would you kind of sum that up and what issues are arising? Is that the AI issues you're talking about?
Yeah, so certainly with the advent of Gen AI and the latest and greatest AI techniques has seen sort of a massive increase in deep fake porn and child sexual abuse material.
Hmm.
Uh, like in 2017, a survey found one in eight people had been targets. Obviously, women were significantly more likely. Um, and the experts expect social media to be flooded with deep fake porn videos, deep fake voice. And since 2019, there's like a 550% increase. I don't know if you remember, but the app, sorry, Deep Nude got shut down,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
right? Because it had like over 100,000 users. And there are a number of call them nudify apps, and today in 25 minutes with spendings $0, you can create a minute long deep fake pornography video, you know um,
But where
using
would
any.
you put it? Tell me, look, so let's say I was interested, not me, but somebody was interested in doing that, right? For criminal or for personal revenge or whatever. I mean, where would they put it that wouldn't be taken down?
So yeah, great question. So there's three things, sort of three buckets we've got to put this in. And some of bucket one is call it self gratification,
Mm.
uh, for their own purpose on their own on computers. Second one is for humiliation of the
That's
individual,
the revenge pornography thing,
revenge pornography. And
Mm.
the third one we sort of talked about, which is financial extortion, sextortion.
Yeah,
And whether it's the open web, deep web, or dark web, is flooded with pornography and child pornography. So there are a lot of people out there. There's a lot of demand out there, and what's concerning is CSAM, child sexual abuse material,
yeah,
is being normalized. It's to say, well, it's everywhere, therefore it must be okay.
yeah.
So it's a growing threat. The UK's Internet Watch Foundation again said there's a significant and growing threat where AI is being used to exploit children. And they found that in October 23, I believe their report, they identified over 20,000 images on the dark web.
This was a UK Internet Watch
It
Foundation
is, yeah,
report. Yeah.
UK NGO. In countries like South Korea, it's become a national emergency. Where Telegram was being used to blackmail, dozens of women into performing sexual acts. Now the ringleader, is serving 42 years, and you probably saw the boss of Telegram being and the founder,
Yeah,
Pavel
I did.
Durov.
Yeah, I mean, he's now being challenged. I don't know what the latest thing is today on that, but I didn't hear that he was challenged. I mean, I was going to ask you about, if you like, grading social media platforms, because obviously Telegram's getting a bad press, always has done, to be honest with you, as well, because of all the various sort of conspiracies that it seemed to publish without much challenge. But Are there any that you would consider to be more socially responsible in terms of platforms?
I think, and that's a tough one to answer.
Sorry, I put you on the
You
spot
know,
there.
no, that's fine. I think there are those who have, robust policies, at least in writing. But in terms of monitoring and taking down the images and dealing with the problem, I don't believe, and this is my personal opinion, there are, any platforms that are outstanding there to say, hey, let's look up to them.
Hmm.
I just haven't seen it.
Okay.
And what we are seeing is Gen AI being used to generate images, CSAM images being used to train these models, right? And you say, well, they're not real, but what the stats show is habitual porn viewers, 65% of habitual porn viewers become CSAM viewers, and of which 37% see contact with children.
Hmm.
And the more CSAM material that is out there, the more normalized it gets. And what we are seeing, again with the Internet Watch Foundation in the UK, is around half of 10-year-olds it was self-generated.
Oh,
And
really? Really?
yeah,
Half? God.
half, and between sort of 16 and 17, about 92% was self-generated.
Wow.
Right. And we are seeing de-aging of images. So, you can take a
Yeah.
celebrity or any individual and de-age them and nudify them. And you know, legislation is still a work in progress. Even understanding of what a Gen AI image is, what is a
Or
CSAM,
how to even spot it for your
spot
average
it.
person in the street, you know?
And I think up to 80% of law enforcement had trouble, depending on the country, up to 80% had trouble identifying or spotting Gen AI CSAM, for example. And this is only going to get harder as the technology gets better.
Well, let me ask you this, because I remember we're talking about normalization, right? And talking about law enforcement and talking about resources to combat it. Um, Several years ago, I remember having an argument on a radio program with the chief constable in this country at that time, who was the lead for safeguarding for child protection, who said, quote, at least in this country, there's at least 100,000, mainly men, sitting at home downloading child pornography, and we just haven't got the resources to deal with it. Now, okay, that was one thing. But then he went on to say something that I absolutely got furious about. He said, I think really it's a matter for the health service rather than law enforcement. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous because, they don't do it in isolation for a start, apart from the fact that it's a criminal offense and so on, so on, so on. I mean, and they live in families where children get abused. They live in communities where they actually go out and abuse children as well. So, I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing. But the key in there was they really didn't know what to do because they just didn't have the resources to cope with this growing tsunami of a problem.
Yeah. A lot to pack in there. So mind
Yes,
you,
yes.
and then I don't want to be criticizing a law enforcement officer, particularly. I'll be in the UK in the next couple of weeks.
Mm.
Um,
No, no, that was just one person's kind of rather not panicked view, but kind of, what can we do?
I understand sort of, I think I understand sort of
Mm,
her perspective. One, I would 100% agree. Law enforcement is not resourced enough to
mm,
deal with it. Whether we're talking this issue or a number of other issues. If you compare what the banking industry spends versus what law enforcement spends, it's a drop in the ocean. It's like pocket change.
yeah.
Two, I think there is a greater role for health services on the victims and helping victims, because the trauma is a lifetime trauma. I believe you know, it for somebody to admit to the fact that they were, abused as a child, the average age at which they admit it is around 50, 52.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong trauma, right? So, there needs to be better help for them. I don't know whether enough research has been done on the perpetrators to say what's driving this, but schools need to educate more. We need to educate our kids more, and most importantly, technology needs to play a bigger role. There are capabilities today to identify, monitor, take it down.
So some of the answers you're saying really are, which is, I suppose, a fairly obvious thing, but for people to realize, some of the answers are actually within the technology itself, in terms of
Yes.
combating this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, we've got about another, oh, I don't know, 5 or so minutes, but yeah, I wanted to ask you about kind of training and certification course that you mentioned. Could you just give us a little bit of a background on that?
Yeah. So, the good news is that there's a lot of training, free training available on this. And I'll just mention a few, and I'll mention a few sites you can go to.
Can I have some, when we do it, the front page of our podcast, I'll put any links that you give me on it for people if you've got any to give. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
that for people so they don't have to sort of madly rush off and get a pen right now or anything like that. I'll put it on the front page.
Absolutely. I'll send you the link later today after our chat. So
Okay.
one is an organization called the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they do a series of training sessions, webinars. I just participated in it. So that's one of them. They're available on YouTube. The Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists have actually a certification course around this. And in terms of where do I go to learn more, get more information, self-help guides, etc. The International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you're in Canada, the Canadian Center for Child Protection, because they do have a lot of material on their websites for individuals to educate themselves. The Internet Watch Foundation,
And
in terms
SPCC in this country too have stuff on.
exactly, and SVCC in the UK, the various modern slavery helplines. In the UK, you've got the Met Police. The what's the UK website? modernslavery.gov.uk. And there are a number of others which
No,
we
no.
can
I mean, I think that's terrific food for thought. I mean, and interestingly enough, the next guest I'm going to have on the program that will probably be a podcast, I hope, about a week after you go out, is a woman, Kate Garbers, who I'm going to be reviewing her book, Unseen Lives: The Hidden World of Modern Slavery. And she worked for, at one point, she worked for Unseen, which is the leading UK charity in terms of anti-slavery. I don't know if you've ever worked with them or talked with them.
I haven't, but I certainly would love to.
But I mean, like as I said, so there's going to be a bit of continuity there as far as the UK is concerned. But I mean, so much of what you said to think about here. I mean, I must be able to sort of put it on the front page and actually do it. But get back to the things that you wanted to sort of fold back on a little bit for the last few minutes. Some of it, the pig butchering side of it. Did you want to talk about more protection, or is it mainly a case of kind of sharing and swallowing your embarrassment, to be quite frank?
So the sextortion, you mean? With the sextortion, like I said, don't give any money. Talk to somebody. There are organizations that will walk you through every step of the way.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Please don't resort to self-harm. With sextortion, if you don't know the number, block them. Don't give it any information out. If it's too good to be true, then it generally is.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
you will certainly make money the first time round. Small, you'll make 500, say $500, and it'll gradually drag you in. Remember, these guys are professionals. They've been doing this for a very long time, and thousands of people, whether they be professionals, bankers, doctors, whoever, get conned into this. So, it's not that you're stupid, it's that these guys are professionals.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, how do you see things developing over the next 6 months, let's say, for example? I mean, have you got any optimism to offer at all?
Um, it's going to be, honestly, it's going to be a slog for all of us, because at the rate at which it's growing,
Yeah.
is challenging. I think we've still all got to do what we're doing. In fact, a bigger effort. Come together as an industry, come together as financial service industry. Think about consortiums. Technology can play. The big technology players can play a major role, and we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel there, at least. Kudos to the UK with the online safety bill. We are
Which some
beginning,
people argue didn't really go far enough, but I understand your point. Yeah. Yeah.
right, is to say, well, you look at other countries, and, UK, yes, it may not have gone far enough, but, and I was actually at the UN, and the response from some other countries was appalling. The UK's done something. And I think a number of other countries are following suit. I think that's well needed.
Slowly, 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 eh?
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
there is no magic bullet, quick solution to this.
no. And all the time, more and more and more people are becoming, because the world is a tiny place when you think about technology's reach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kareem, I think we've come to the end of it. Not the end of what I could talk to you about, because I honestly, genuinely could listen to some of what you're saying for hours to come, because there's just so much to consider. I think the best thing to do is to get this out, and we'll listen to Kate Garber's next week as well. But also, maybe you'd come back in 6 or 9 months again and give us an update.
Okay, perfect. That would be great.
Okay, well, look, for now, right? Just for now, Karim Rajwani, I really appreciate your time and your effort and your work. So thanks ever so much for being on the program, and speak to you very soon.
Thank you, David. Talk to you soon.
Okay, hang on.